So this is some news that I absolutely know the internet is not going to like very much, but Sony apparently wanted to make a remake of Bloodborne and have BluePoint Studio make it. That was a dream that not only Sony had, but many people online had. Unfortunately, according to PC Gamer and Tyler Culp, Sony was ready to approve a Bloodborne remake, but From Software turned it down. So, it says it might finally be time to accept that a Bloodborne remake isn't happening, at least not anytime soon. According to a report from Bloomberg, the project almost happened, but FromSoft are the ones who ultimately turned it down. A Bloodborne remake has been demanded by fans for so long that Sony remaster studio BluePoint figured it was inevitable that it would be given the job, especially after its very successful Demon Souls remake in 2020. But Sony tasked the studio with making a live service God of War game instead. When Sony abruptly ditched its live service initiative in early 2025 and canceled BluePoint's God of War game, BluePoint was left to search for other projects. It approached Sony again to pitch its idea for a Bloodborne remake, and Sony was receptive. The only reason it didn't happen, according to a report, was because FromSoft didn't want to make it happen. Bloomberg doesn't have any details on why FromSoft turned it down, but points to comments by former PlayStation executive Shuhei Yoshida in an interview with Kinda Funny from FromSoft president Hidetaki Miyazaki, wanting it to happen but not wanting anyone else to touch it. Miyazaki has previously said he's not opposed to a PC port of Bloodborne and acknowledged that other FromSoft developers want to make one, but Miyazaki is insistent on doing it himself. Yoshida believes Sony would respect his wishes even though it owns the rights to the game. BluePoint was still looking for something to work on when Sony announced last week that it would be shutting down the studio, laying off what will be reportedly about 70 people. Yoshida is also the person who has spoken about a dispute between Sony and FromSoft around the release of Demon Souls on a podcast last year. Sony, owning the rights to the Dark Souls progenitor, wanted to work with FromSoft on a sequel, but the studio was so disappointed with how it was treated, it chose Bandai Namco as a publisher instead. Sony and FromSoft's partnership for Bloodborne might have been a sign of some kind of resolution between the two, or merely a compromise if it's true that Miyazaki doesn't trust it enough to handle a remake. Miyazaki told Game Informer earlier this year that Bloodborne is a special game for me, and that perhaps the strongest reflection of my type of flavoring of a game that one can experience. It sounds like it's going to be up to Miyazaki and Miyazaki alone for whether or not we'll ever get a remake of one of the greatest action RPGs of all time. I have my issues with BluePoint's Demon Souls remake when it comes to the modernized aesthetic compared to the original game, but I would have happily taken a Bloodborne remake of any kind from a studio with such a long and strong track record. So, this is surprising. Not that Sony wanted a Bloodborne remake. I think that, much like its fans, a Bloodborne remake is top of mind for many people to potentially get made. However, if Miyazaki doesn't want it to happen, Sony's going to respect their wishes. And they don't have to. They could just torch the relationship and make it. They own the rights to Bloodborne, but I don't think that's really prudent, and certainly Sony doesn't. But to take this from BluePoint's point of view, it's very unfortunate given that BluePoint's kind of, or at least they were, kind of the one studio that people trusted to handle these types of games outside of FromSoft. The Demon Souls remake was extremely popular and extremely well received. So I think a lot of people, like BluePoint themselves, figured that if a Bloodborne remake was going to happen, it was going to be BluePoint that does it. And since it wasn't going to happen, BluePoint was a little listless, and even like a year after the cancellation of their God of War game, they hadn't figured out what to work on next, which is a pretty big revelation in my, point of view. I think that I expected them to at least have been working on something, but to have nothing in the pipeline is kind of a huge blow. And it sheds light onto why the studio was shut down. They just couldn't find a new project to work on. So, what are your thoughts on this? Are you disappointed that a Bloodborne remake is going to be handled exclusively by Miyazaki and FromSoft and they won't let anyone else touch it? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. New videos coming out all the time here on the channel. And check out our other channels, which include We Get Everything, where we do video game reviews and video essays on video games. Our sports channel, We Get Sports, where we cover sports news. And our podcasting channel, Better Radio. Again, thank you so much for checking this one out, and I will see you in the next one.